The city skyline was a breathtaking tapestry woven from light and glass, a monument to the endless ambition that fueled it. From her perch on the 70th floor, Eleanor Vance, the CEO of Vance Global, watched the silent, electric pulse of the metropolis. Each window was a story, each light a life lived with a purpose she understood intimately: to strive, to build, to conquer. Her office, a study in minimalist luxury, felt less like a workspace and more like a command center. Her desk, a single slab of polished obsidian, held a perfectly organized stack of papers, each representing a multi-million-dollar deal. Her presence was as commanding as the empire she controlled, her reputation built on ruthless intelligence, precision in every deal, and an uncanny ability to read people. But tonight, the usual sense of victory felt hollow. For all her achievements, she was profoundly, overwhelmingly alone. She had everything the world could offer: a sprawling penthouse, a closet full of designer clothes, a yacht waiting in the harbor. But the victories had become predictable. The challenges were gone. She had climbed the highest peak, and there was nothing left to climb. The air up here was thin, and the silence was deafening. Her gaze drifted to the chessboard. Pieces, dark and polished, sat waiting for a battle. Her opponent was a man so far outside her world, he might as well have been from another planet. "Beat me in chess," she had said earlier, her voice a calm, steady challenge. "And I'll marry you." The words were a joke, a bizarre dare born of an impulse she couldn't explain. She wanted to see if he would flinch, if he would see the absurdity of it, if he would ask for something else. She wanted to see if anyone could surprise her anymore. He was Liam Carter, a man whose hands were calloused from years of scrubbing floors, not from shaking hands on a trading floor. A single dad, his world revolved around his daughter, Lily, and a cleaning job that barely paid the bills. His simple clothes and humble demeanor were a stark contrast to the opulence of her office. But his eyes held a quiet strength, a kind of intelligence that came not from business schools but from the long, hard lessons of life. He looked at the board, then at her, and his lack of reaction was the first thing that genuinely surprised her. He hadn't expected the invitation, and yet, he accepted it with a quiet dignity she had not anticipated. The origin of this bizarre encounter was a series of small, seemingly insignificant moments. It had started innocently enough: a spilled coffee in the hallway. Liam had been on his nightly cleaning route when a distracted executive bumped into him, sending a torrent of hot coffee cascading across the pristine marble floor. Eleonora had been walking by, and instead of a swift dismissal, she had stopped to watch Liam. While the executive apologized profusely and offered to pay for his clothes, Liam simply, calmly, and meticulously began cleaning the spill. He didn't complain. He didn't ask for a handout. He just did his job with a quiet patience that was completely foreign to her high-stakes world. Later that week, she had noticed him again. A window in her office was stuck, a minor annoyance that her staff had been unable to fix. She was surprised when Liam, seeing her frustration, simply asked if he could take a look. In a matter of minutes, his rough, capable hands had the mechanism working again. He simply nodded, packed his tools, and was about to leave when she noticed the small, worn travel chest set in his backpack. It was a relic, the box faded and the pieces chipped. She felt an inexplicable tug of curiosity. That was when she decided to test him. For Eleonora, the challenge was partly amusement, partly a genuine, if desperate, search for something real. She was a woman who had everything but felt the hollow ache of victories that came too easily. For Liam, the challenge was more complex. He didn't see the woman. He saw the power, the immense chasm between their lives. The words "marry me" held no weight for him. He saw it as an opportunity, a way to prove to himself, and to her, that his worth wasn't tied to his bank account. It was about dignity. It was about showing that a man who came from nothing could stand on equal ground with someone at the very top. As they sat facing each other, the room seemed to shrink. The city's hum outside faded away, leaving only the soft clicking of chess pieces and the quiet, rhythmic beating of their two very different hearts. The game began. Eleonora, with her usual icy precision, moved her pieces like a grandmaster. Each move was calculated, a cold, hard logic applied to the board. She was used to winning, to dominating. She expected him to falter, to be intimidated, to make a rookie mistake. But he didn't. His first move was a simple pawn advancement, but it was made with a quiet confidence that unsettled her. Every move he made was deliberate, each piece placed with a purpose that seemed to carry the weight of his life. He didn't play with arrogance. He played with a kind of raw, unshakable determination. Eleonora could sense it, though she couldn't understand it. She could never imagine the struggle behind his every move. Every pawn he advanced carried echoes of nights he had gone without food so Lily could eat. Days he had walked miles in the rain because the bus fare was too high. Moments when he had swallowed his pride just to keep a roof over their heads. She, too, had her burdens, though hers were hidden behind a veil of luxury and power. Years of profound loneliness were masked by her corporate success. A string of failed relationships, built on convenience rather than connection, had left her heart far more fragile than anyone suspected. She had once loved, truly and deeply, but it had ended in betrayal and a lesson learned the hard way, that people would always disappoint you. She had built walls around her heart so high and thick that no one had been able to breach them. Until now. Perhaps that was why she made the challenge. Perhaps she wanted to see if someone could surprise her. Someone who didn't approach her with fear or flattery, but with honesty and skill. As the game progressed, her smirk began to fade. Not because she was losing, but because she was beginning to see him. She saw a man who was patient, not rushed. A man who was intelligent, not intimidated. She saw a fighter, a survivor. She saw him in a way she hadn't seen anyone in years. The city outside sparkled like a dream, but inside that room, the tension grew heavier with every move. Pawns advanced with purpose. Knights leapt with precision. Bishops cut across the board like silent blades. He was patient, not rushing, not intimidated. He didn't seem to care about the stakes, only about the game itself. And then, in a moment so swift she barely saw it coming, he cornered her king. 3 moves. That was all it took. 3 brilliant, calculated moves that ended the game. He had beaten her decisively. Her eyes widened, not in humiliation, but in something closer to awe. No one had ever defeated her so quickly, so completely. And certainly not someone she had so easily underestimated. For a long moment, there was a profound silence. The only sound was the soft hum of the city and the echo of their breathing. Then, instead of anger, a quiet smile touched her lips. She realized this wasn't about the game anymore. It was about the truth she had seen in him. The resilience, the strength, the refusal to be defined by his circumstances. He had looked at a queen and seen a chess player. He had looked at an empire and seen a single game. She had offered the challenge as a joke, a test, maybe even a trap. But what she found instead was a profound respect, and perhaps something deeper. In the days that followed, she found reasons to call him back. Not for another game, but for conversations that lingered long after the office lights dimmed. She wanted to know more about the man who had humbled her. She asked about his life, about his daughter, about the kind of courage it took to start over every single day despite the odds. She learned that the chipped chess set had been a gift from his father, who had taught him to play in a small apartment with a cracked window and a leaky roof. The lessons weren't just about strategy, but about patience, about seeing the whole board, and about never giving up, even when it seemed like all was lost. He never boasted. He never asked for anything. His quiet humility began to break through the formidable walls she had built around her heart. What started as a challenge became a connection. What began as a chess game became something much more profound. She found herself looking forward to his visits, to the moments of honesty in a world full of masks. She would look out at the city, not as a conqueror, but as a woman who had finally found a single genuine connection in a sea of impersonal facades. He, though cautious, began to see her not as the CEO, Eleanor Vance, but as a woman searching for meaning beyond boardrooms and balance sheets. It was in the quiet moments that something real began to grow. The way she listened intently when he spoke about Lily's school play. The way he noticed when she was exhausted from a long day and brought her coffee without her having to ask. He saw the woman beneath the armor, and she saw the man behind the humble job. But not everyone understood. The world they lived in, the world of Eleanor Vance, was one of judgment and scrutiny. Her friends questioned her. Her board members doubted her judgment, whispering that her focus was slipping. People whispered that a CEO had no business involving herself with a man who cleaned floors for a living. The pressure mounted, the scrutiny became intense, and she began to wonder if she had been foolish to let him into her world. The doubt crept in, a serpent whispering that this was a mistake, that she was opening herself up to ridicule. And yet, every time she looked at him, she saw the same unwavering strength she had seen that night on the chessboard. The strength of a man who had faced true adversity and never flinched. He had nothing to offer her in terms of wealth or status, but he had everything she truly needed: loyalty, honesty, and the kind of love that couldn't be bought. He never once asked her for a favor, never used her name to get ahead. He simply treated her like a woman, not a corporation. This was a novelty to her, a breath of fresh air in a life suffocating with opportunists. The final turning point came on a stormy evening when her company faced a crisis that threatened to destroy everything she had built. A competitor had launched a hostile takeover, and her board was panicking. As partners pulled away and advisors lost faith, the loneliness she had always felt intensified. But this time, it was different. This time, someone stood with her. Liam, with his calm and steady presence, reminded her that she was more than her failures, that her worth wasn't defined by public opinion or a fluctuating stock market. He reminded her of the strength she had shown in building her company from the ground up, not just of her recent struggles. He told her a story about how Lily, after failing a math test, refused to give up, studying every night until she passed it. His words, simple and honest, were a lifeline in the chaos. In that moment, she realized that the game they had played months ago had been more than a game. It had been a glimpse into the kind of partnership she had always wanted. Not a partnership built on deals and contracts, but on trust, mutual respect, and unwavering support. He was the one person who saw her when all others saw her title. He had shown her a kind of courage she had never encountered in her world of corporate raiders and power plays. By the time the crisis passed, she had made her decision. The challenge she had once given as a joke had become a promise she wanted to keep. Not because he had beaten her in 3 moves, but because he had stood by her in ways no one else had. Their lives didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still challenges, still people who doubted them, but they had something rare and precious. A connection that defied all expectations, and a love that had grown in the unlikeliest of places. She no longer saw the city as a kingdom to be conquered. She saw it as a home, and in the man who had once been a stranger, she had finally found her king.